Shalom and welcome to TBN Israel, the podcast. We are here, Mati Shoshani, the one and only.
Yair Pinto, also the one and only.
Yeah, it's good to have two one and onlys.
No second places here. We're both, what are we, millennials?
Both equal. And today we're talking about the ceasefire that shattered in the Gaza Strip with a surprise aerial strike carried out by multiple Air Force planes of the IDF targeting Hamas targets, Hamas officials, Hamas installations, new Hamas terrorists, new Hamas terror tunnels, and I'm sure that more and more. And the cool thing about it was that Hamas was completely taken by surprise. And that began the resumption of the fighting, the war in the Gaza Strip after 59 days of ceasefire and exchanges of hostages in exchange for
many terrorists, thousands of terrorists.
Terrorists. That's the situation. So we are now moving on, and on the ground at the moment, we have Hamas terrorists that are hiding because the Air Force is conducting its operations.
I thought you were about to say, joining us from the Hamas studio.
The Hamas studio underground in the tunnel in Khan Yunis.
That's where I thought you were going. First, before we continue, two important things. Tomer isn't with us this week. He's been replaced by a mannequin. The mannequin's doing an equally good job. So. I'm joking. We miss you, Tomer.
Yes. Tomer is actually celebrating his birthday. So he's having a few days off. And Mazal Tov. Happy birthday, Tomer. We love you. So let's break it down, Mati, before we laugh some more about what's happening in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, so let's remind everyone how we got to this moment, first of all. Mm-hmm. So the ceasefire is no more. Israel is back at war. In fact, I would say, and we've been talking about this quite a lot this last week, that we've been back at war on multiple fronts. Mm-hmm. Israel invaded, I guess we aerially attacked the Gaza Strip with Hamas.
Not just with the air. We have forces
limited forces on the ground. But at the same time that it was happening here, it's also happening elsewhere in the Middle East. The U.S. struck the Houthis. Israel, is like we're making a whole lot of noise.
Don't get me started on the Houthis. Two
days
days in a row, wake me up, wake my kid up. It's annoying, these Houthis.
Was it 2 days in a row?
Twice this week. I don't know if it's 2 days in a row, but twice this week.
I only had one alarm this week.
You didn't wake up also from the alarm yesterday?
No, I did. I woke up and decided to go back to bed.
Snooze the missile alarm.
No, I looked at my phone and said, thank you, I've seen this show before. But to our point...
Trusting the anti-aerial defense systems.
I have a lot of trust. I'm full of faith. Anyway, so Israel is back at war with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. We're back at war because the ceasefire ended between us and the Hamas terrorist organization. Yeah. It ended because Hamas refused to progress with the negotiation. Yeah. They did everything in their power, and it was quite a lot actually when you think about it, to stall, to delay, to prevent the negotiation from continuing any which way.
Yeah, to launch terror warfare against the Israeli society at large, to release the hostages in a shameful manner, conducting ceremonies while releasing them, projecting power, and basically everything that they can in order not to release the remaining of the hostages. At the moment, we have 59 hostages in Gaza.
I believe so, yeah.
25 of them are presumed to be still alive, but you don't know for sure.
No.
And we want them back. So this is the situation. All the negotiations attempt failed, and now Israel is applying additional pressure with a new IDF chief of staff who's actually from the armored corps. He's a tank guy like us. So he's in charge of applying multiple pressure levers on Hamas. No more aid entering the Gaza Strip. And the humanitarian assistance that was provided to Hamas, basically to the Palestinian people, is cut off on multiple levels. From limited amount of electricity, limited water supply into the Gaza Strip, no humanitarian aid, no fuel, and no more allowing people to get out of the Gaza Strip unless it's very, very severe humanitarian situations that need to be approved by Israel.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the IDF spokesperson's unit today stated in Arabic to the Gazan population, Sinwar number 1, the big brother, destroyed almost all of Gaza. Sinwar number 2, the younger brother, will destroy the rest unless you topple Hamas, give us back our hostages. and we give you also the option of relocating to another country if you choose to do that.
Yeah. And so the Israeli government says this very interesting thing. It says, we're no longer negotiating through a ceasefire.
Yes.
We're only negotiating under fire,
Yes.
which is a counterintuitive thing to say, but it makes sense when you think about the realities on the ground of working against or with Hamas, one way or another. Hamas organization, to remind everyone how we got to this moment, they, a couple months back, they realized that the next plan for the Gaza Strip is we're going to do everything. This is the Israel, the U.S., the UAE, the Qataris, and also the Saudis, and actually several other countries were sort of in the mix, the Egyptians and the Jordanians to a certain degree. We're all talking over their head, saying let's do everything we can to remove Hamas from the Gaza Strip, to bring a ceasefire that includes them being replaced as a government. And they do what you would expect them to do. They stall and they wait and they stall and they wait and they play games and they fake and they feign and they go back and forth. All of that with the purpose of never negotiating at all.
They want to extend, they want to buy more time. That's
Yeah.
what they want. Their goal is to have a ceasefire that lasts forever. They don't want peace with us. They want a ceasefire until they rearm, regroup, and carry out more attacks against Israel.
Yeah.
And by the way, according to recent reports, in this past few weeks, Hamas planned another surprise attack against Israel that also include kidnapping soldiers and civilians. Just now, in these current few weeks, and Israel surprised Hamas by conducting the aerial strikes against them.
Yeah.
So they plan to do that also through Judea and Samaria and also in the Gaza Strip on the IDF positions after 59 days of ceasefire when our forces, they try to catch us off guard.
They've tried many times.
Yeah.
I've just finished, 2 days ago, finished a round of reserves in Judea and Samaria. Hamas, what they did in the Gaza Strip in October of 2023, they're not and will not be doing in Judea and Samaria. And you can mark my words on that. The IDF is much, much, much stronger in Judea and Samaria than ever before, but also it's been very strong in preventing any actions. And in fact, in reality, very little terrorist attacks have succeeded in Judea and Samaria, including ones that were attempted by Hamas itself. To get to our point, though, so the IDF has a surprise attack on Hamas, and this time, unlike during the war to a certain degree, we're not just attacking the military commanders, we're dismantling Hamas leadership. And the reason we're doing that is because our goal is to dismantle Hamas, the organization, not just the fighting force of it.
Yes.
Hamas is a government, a terrorist organization, a quote-unquote aid organization.
Health ministry.
Yeah, many things that they don't actually do. It's quite...
unalive ministry, basically.
They're not. Yeah, they don't do anything that's positive for their population. And where we see sort of the change of mindset with the Israeli government is we're now going after their leadership. Their leadership is a leadership that brings only death and destruction to their people.
Yes.
Why would we cooperate with that? Why would we help them with that? So we're not. We went after their families. We did it in a surprise attack. We caught many of them in their homes.
Yeah, off guard. Before they were able to escape to their bomb shelters, terror tunnels.
Yeah, and many of them, and just to sort of like dive into their methodology in the past, when they know an attack is coming, they'll usually hide in the tunnels. They'll move their family and stuff like that. This time around, they never even got to that. They were inside their homes with their families, and they were struck by the Israeli Air Force in many cases. So a very successful preemptive attack by the Israeli government. Let's not be shy to speak the truth here, in the sense that Hamas was planning to do the same thing to us.
Yes.
And
it
they
was
were
clear that
the
ceasefire was collapsing.
Yeah, and they had done many things leading up to that moment, these many small infringements. Yeah. And Hamas was, on every possible level, preparing to go back to war in the Gaza Strip. They're recruiting young people. They're arming them. They're moving munitions. They're rebuilding tunnels. As we speak, they were rebuilding
even tunnels that were destroyed in the previous round of fighting, they were rebuilding them.
Yeah, so they're not at all sort of waiting for the next phase of the negotiations. They were planning to go back to war. They've done everything they can to hide the remaining hostages deep within civilian population. So any attempt on our end, on the Israeli end, to rescue those hostages would be resulting in a huge casualty toll on the Palestinian side.
Yes, and then more news against Israel in the international media, which is something that they want to do. Okay,
exactly.
Let's look at the situation now. What's different now between the past round of fighting in the Gaza Strip in terms of the IDF? Okay, so on one hand, this time we do not have the pressure from the international community and especially from the United States to deliver humanitarian aid while we are fighting. Imagine, in the last round of fighting, we were allowing thousands of trucks filled with gas, food, and other supplies to an enemy state that is carrying a war against us.
Yeah, for the entirety of the war.
Exactly. Throughout the whole time of the war.
The numbers are more than 1,000 trucks per day.
That's crazy.
More than 1,000 trucks per day. Many of them, by the way, and we've both been there and seen the trucks distributing the goods.
Lines
of trucks waiting to go in. And Israel did this knowing full well that Hamas was hijacking all of the goods going in. Immediately.
We have footage of that. We've shown it many times.
And reselling it, and yet we allowed it to continue because the choice was or starvation for the people in Gaza or that the Hamas continues to control. We chose humanitarian over the defense of our country.
Exactly.
And we did it time and time again. Right now we're in a very different boat. And the change is the change of the identity of the person in the White House.
Yes.
Biden had immense pressure from his constituency, especially leading up to the elections in the U.S., of people pushing him to
apply pressure
against Israel and aid the Palestinians in the mix.
Yes.
And they did.
Well, definitely.
They did again and again. They pressured Israel again and again, and they were very, very active and proactive in providing aid. Trump comes in with a different tune altogether.
Yeah. Let's clear the rubble from the Gaza Strip, relocate the people, and then America can open a golf course instead.
Yeah, that was, I think,
a completely different thing.
A bit of a joke, but he goes on in very, very, very clear terms, and he says to the international community again and again, Israel has every right to defend itself, every right to take action against Hamas, every right to take whatever level of violence needed to protect its country, both against Hamas and against the Houthis in Yemen.
And against Iran.
And of course Iran, directly speaking. So a very, very different tune that's coming out of the White House. And that tune, not only is it a tailwind for the Israeli army in fighting against Hamas, but it also we're almost having to play catch-up with the U.S. administration.
On the hawkishness.
And how aggressive you are in fighting your enemies. And it's an interesting place to be, but I'd say it's a positive place to be.
That's the way you should wage a war. Aggressive, fast, and end it as soon as possible. You can't supply your enemies with food for 600 days and accept that and plan that they will stop fighting. This is a very bad situation that we were in, and I hope that this round will end a lot quicker. But more than the aid situation that was provided to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, you have the weapons of Israel. Okay, so since the first round of fighting in the Gaza Strip, the IDF learned its lessons. One, the majority of the leadership of the military of Israel was changed. They resigned. Now new members took the ranks. The soldiers are way more professional and equipped than what they were in the October 7, 2023. And we just received a new shipment of bombs, armored vehicles, equipment, etc. The troops are already on the borders surrounding the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, just the other day we saw footage of our chief of staff with several brigade commanders.
Yeah.
And again, so just to frame this in light of what you're saying, our army now is as battle-hardened as an army could possibly be. And we have some of the young men and women that are fighting in the Gaza Strip are people that...
some of the older men and women.
Yeah, but some of these people, the extremity of this war, or how harsh it was and how intense it was, these people have seen more war and more intense warfare in their life than many soldiers, myself included, by the way, did in a lifetime of military service. And so they're battle-hardened troops, very experienced, very careful, very professional in the way they conduct themselves. And now there are multiple brigades sitting on the border with Gaza ready to go in.
Yes.
And
just
this is
waiting for the order. And just now the Golani Brigade received the order and is already operating inside the Netzarim corridor, up to the middle of it. This is the corridor that separates between the north and the south of the Gaza Strip. Yeah. And we are already reposting the positions on this corridor to try and divide the Gaza Strip into two again.
Yeah, and what we're calling this is, there's a whole name for this operation. It's called in Hebrew, Oz Vacherev, or Strength and Sword Operation.
Yes.
We love the strong names in the military, and this is
Oz Vacherev.
Yeah, no change to that policy. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about all of this is it's an enormous military operation that is gearing up to happen. Even a few weeks ago, I would have said, I don't see this happening. We have the orders, the marching orders have come in to recruit hundreds of thousands of additional reserve soldiers. We have forces amassed on the border. We have the Air Force already, conducting strikes. We're moving forces from within the country.
Well, at the moment, we have so far so-called ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon, so we don't have the bulk of the army prepared inside South Lebanon, except for 5 posts that we still hold there. So we have the troops to conduct this ground maneuver in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, and like you were saying just a minute ago, the IDF today is so much bigger and stronger than it was in 2023. I mean, it is...
I would like to compare it to the 6-Day War and to this war. I think it's stronger, the strongest that it's ever been.
It's a different makeup when it comes to the units. The army used to be many, many more tank divisions because our enemy was tank on tank warfare. Much more of an infantry and technology mix now in sort of...
And Air Force.
Technology mix Air Force. But huge military presence. And this isn't just like the recruits coming in for a day operation. Now we have, myself included, you included, we have soldiers that have done hundreds of days of reserves. So we're all, everyone who's in reserves right now, well-trained, oiled machines. Everyone knows how to use their weaponry. They've trained, they've fought together. It's a whole different game. And the IDF is ready to go fully into the Gaza Strip again, unlike what it was a month ago.
Plus, we've been there. We know the terrain. We know what we're dealing with. We know the Hamas tactics of underground warfare. And we learned the lessons from the first round of fighting.
Yes.
Plus, we know that Hamas is going to be concentrated in hospitals, like it was before. It's going to be concentrated in mosques, in schools, in kindergartens. That's where they have the underground command centers. That's where they keep the rockets. That's where they keep the AK-47s. We know it. It's like nothing will change. These are the locations. So we know where Hamas is. And we know also that we have the ability to move the civilian population safely to safe zones and screen all the terrorists that disguise themselves as women and civilians on the way to these safe zones.
Yeah.
So we are ready for that.
So now's a good time to talk about today's sponsor.
Okay.
It's always a good time to talk about our sponsor because that's what keeps the lights on.
Definitely. Who's the sponsor today?
So today's sponsor is MADA. And here's the story back here. The attacks on this country have not stopped. And even though the war has paused, the threat is still very, very much real and existent. Just a few days ago, MADA forces rescued a young woman, Yali Gul, who was critically wounded in a terrorist attack on February 27th. And MADA was there within minutes of the event taking place. Their paramedics treated the wounded right there. They stabilized the most critical. They rushed them to the hospital. And unfortunately, despite their best efforts, Yali, this young woman, passed away. And this is why it is important to support MADA. In this country, the need for first responders is far greater than other populations. We fight on a daily basis. MADA and the likes of them, but specifically them, we're talking about them today, they're our sponsor, an incredible organization of volunteers. We've filmed with them. Amazing people.
I was there with them on the ambulance. They reached the scene of the incident, the terror attack, or wherever people need help within a minute and a half. That's like the average or something like that. It's
incredible.
Like unbelievable. It's super fast. And they're there immediately treating the wounded. Doesn't matter if it's Arab, Jew, Druze, Muslim, Christian. They just go there to help and save lives.
Yeah, and the money is very well spent. MADA has an enormous network of volunteers. And in this country, every second counts in how fast you get to a wounded person, how fast you're able to give aid. And people's support also matters. And this is a moment for people to stop. Where's our camera? If you're watching this at home, just stop for a minute and follow the link.
www.savelifeisrael.com.
Thank you, Yair.
By supporting MADA, you also support us and you save lives in Israel. Okay, so I think it's a win-win-win situation. And Mati, need to remember your YouTube, your URL links.
I knew you'd be there to save me, Yair. Anyway, so that's our sponsor for today. MADA, make sure to pause the video and make a donation. It really, really makes a difference. And it's always touching for me to see the names of the people that support the ambulances, the off-road vehicles, the scooters, the guys with the backpacks. There's always someone there that's there to give aid. So back to our topic today. Israel has fully gone back to war in the Gaza Strip. The ceasefire has collapsed. We're once again engaged. We still have hostages in the Gaza Strip, and we are ready to wage war to its fullest against Hamas. Israel's goal has been and will be to topple the Hamas evil government. That hasn't changed. We've gone after their military and their civilian leadership now, because their goal is for them not to lead Hamas.
Plus, there is no difference between the military and the civilian leadership in Hamas.
Yeah,
it's the same. It's the same bad guys. So one guy's in charge of the, housing ministry of Gaza to build terror positions in the housing rooftops, or to prepare an underground terror tunnel between the houses in the Gaza Strip. It's all intertwined.
You could say differently.
Sorry, I don't know. Somebody's calling me.
Yes. Put your computer on mute. Yeah. You could look at it differently. You could say there's one ministry in Hamas that steals the money that's given to them and builds with it tunnels, and another one steals the money that's given to it and pays off the sons and the daughters of Hamas leaders. And there's a third one that steals it for a different purpose.
They're very efficient in stealing the money from the Palestinian people. That's something we can agree on.
Highly consistent at that.
Yeah,
highly consistent. In fact, I want to remind people, during the war, Hamas leadership was asked, why don't you hide your population inside the tunnels? And their response, iconically and amusing as it is, was, it's not for us to take care of that. Our job is to hide so we can fight against the Zionists and destroy them. The population is someone else's responsibility. The international organizations, they need to take care of our population.
Or Israel. Israel took care of the Palestinian population more than Hamas throughout this war.
Well, wonderful leadership.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, so back to what's going on in the Gaza Strip. This has been happening. It's been rough in the Gaza Strip, but we have to continue this operation because there's no point in stopping where we are. Hamas showed very clearly that they have no indication or no inclination whatsoever to actually return all the hostages. What they're doing is playing this game of dangling the hostages that remain in front of the Israeli population, trying to torment us emotionally and spiritually, succeeding in doing it. And the Israeli government says, we're done with this. And we say this publicly. We're going back to negotiating under fire. Yep. And if you want us to stop the fire,
let's release the hostages.
Release the hostages.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. We're done. And it really, when you think about it, it makes sense. The equation just isn't working. They intentionally were slowing down the release of hostages time and time again. Mm-hmm. And they were doing so intentionally because they wanted to draw out as much time as possible. And then every time we went back to negotiations, they found an excuse to ignore what they agreed to. And there was no point in continuing. So our government did what every government should do, fight for its people.
Yeah, definitely. Also, it's part of the clauses of the agreement. Like if there is no movement to the next stage of the agreement, the fighting resumes.
Yeah.
That's what it is. The ceasefire agreement should be, matched with releasing hostages and, moving forward to something that will end this war permanently or resume the war.
So let's talk about this hostage situation.
Okay.
Both of us were, where were we? We were up north yesterday, and I was talking to one of our writers and producers on the phone. Mm-hmm. And we were going back and forth about this whole hostage thing. And my statement to him said, look, if I was in the prime minister's seat or the leadership seat, I'd say it's not on the table right now, as painful as it is. He says, why do you say that? I said, because Hamas they never intend to release the hostages.
That's their only card.
It's their only card. They'll do everything in their power to whatever you do, whatever Israel would have done, they would have remained at the end of whatever phase it is, phase 2.2, 3.5. It doesn't matter what the phase would have been. At the end of the process, they would have still have hostages, and they would refuse to tell you what happened to them. And to the Israeli public and to the families of the hostages, it doesn't make a difference if it's 8 hostages or 18 hostages. They're still holding them.
Yes.
Our public, and I'm saying this for an international audience that might not be aware of this, we remember in Israel, every child and every adult in this country remembers the names of soldiers that were kidnapped a decade ago.
Yes, exactly.
We remember the names of the soldiers that were killed in the opening strikes of the Second Lebanon War in 2006.
When the Syrian government collapsed, we were talking about our Israeli spy. When are we going to get his remains back? And this is 50 years ago. Yeah,
many, many years ago. And so to our public, and I'm not saying this to degrade or diminish of any of it, this is just the reality of it. If they have, at the end of this war, 5 hostages even, 10 hostages, they still have hostages.
Yes.
And they're still going to use it to torment us as much as they can.
Even if they have one hostage.
Yeah. But I don't think they would have come to one. But let's say they would have released most of what they have.
Yeah.
They still would have kept, and they'd find an excuse to blow up the negotiation. And then you're back into the Gaza Strip. Just they've had longer to equip and buy more young people and indoctrinate them into becoming terrorists. They've had more time to rebuild the tunnels, more time to re-smuggle in the weapon caches and move them around, more time to build the anti-tank and sniper nests to fight the IDF in the Gaza Strip. So why wait?
Exactly.
Why wait?
Every time you wait, there's like more terrorists coming back to the battleground. And because the IDF never left the border between Gaza and Egypt, it's very hard for them to smuggle weapons in. So what they do in order to gain more weapons is they go to the bombs that were launched by the Israeli artillery, by the Israeli planes that didn't explode, and then they try to disassemble them, take the explosive devices from it, and then use that as an improvised explosive device, IED, and plant these on roads that the IDF will use in the ground maneuver.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very dangerous situation, because they're basically playing with ammunition that didn't explode. A lot of the time, their men just explode by trying to do that. But they're willing to risk their own people's lives in order to kill our people.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where you were going with this for a second. If you were concerned about the fact that the terrorists would be blown up by the bombs that they're putting together, I think that would be a positive outcome.
If they blow up,
yeah,
sure.
I'd rather they blow up than our soldiers are blown up by those bombs.
Yeah, but it just shows you they don't care about their own people. They don't care about their own terrorists.
No, they never did. Yair, come on, they never did. They're not a society. It's not the wrong
society.
Word. They're not a terrorist organization that promotes life and virtue.
Which terrorist organization promotes life and virtue? By the way,
none of them. And that's the catch-22 in this whole story, is that the only entities that really promote life and the well-being of other people are democracies.
Yes. How many democracies do we have here in this region, Marty?
Not many.
I think I know only one country.
In our region?
Yeah.
Israel is the only real democracy,
exactly.
Yes. And you can see the outcome of that in our society. And you look at their society, and it leads you to understand that the only possible outcome to everything that's happening in the Gaza Strip is Hamas being removed from the Gaza Strip. That's it.
Yeah, definitely. And we see that also in Lebanon. The new government trying to gain control in Lebanon are saying, leave us alone, Hezbollah and Iran. Yeah. This is not our war. You dragged us into this war against Israel. You destroyed our country. Leave us alone. We do not want you. We do not want other countries fighting their wars on our grounds, which is what happens with Iran. Iran is sending influence, investment, weapons into the Gaza Strip, into Judea and Samaria, into Lebanon. And finally, at least in Lebanon, we see that some people are trying to push against that.
Yes.
And that's actually very, very positive.
I agree.
Yeah, hopefully it will happen also in Yemen with the Houthis.
Yeah, you could look at this from two different angles. Through the lens of Iranian operations, what they've brought to this region is exclusively destruction of the countries that they touch. Every society that they engage with, they destroy their GDP, they destroy their population, they suck the life and the hope out of those people, and they leave behind only death and destruction, and they do it consistently.
At least they lead by example, because they also destroyed their own economic situation and their own population.
But I'd say they're even more cynical and ruthless when it comes to other countries. Within their country, at least they have to keep up appearances of trying to build civil governance, etc. In other countries, they do nothing for them. What they do is they crumble their economies. I mean, Yemen was an impoverished country to begin with. What they did through feeding into the Houthi terrorist organization is they destroyed that country for generations to come. I mean, they made it to the point where the aid organizations refused to come in because it's become so destabilized.
Yes.
Lebanon, before this war, it experienced a series of political assassinations carried out by Hezbollah against leaders from other sects in the country. That's a level of instability that it experienced. You look at Iraq right now, same thing. The Iraqis spoke up repeatedly on a governmental level against Iranian involvement. They said, we don't want, there's this famous scene, I think it's their foreign minister, screaming to the camera, we don't want what you brought to Gaza. We don't want what you brought to Lebanon. Out with Iranians, out with your influence. We want nothing of what you have to give to us. And that's, I think, the message we need to walk away away with,
Exactly.
is get them out. Get them out, push them back into their corner where they belong, and bring something good back into this area. I think that's where maybe we pull this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I just have one last thing to add. I mean, we've seen all this unimaginable hate against Israel from Hamas in the Gaza Strip, from Hezbollah in Lebanon, from Al-Qaeda in Syria, and now from the Houthis in Yemen. I don't think that any Houthi, okay, and you can quote me on that, I don't think that any Houthi met an Israeli or a Jew. But why do they hate us so much? So I want to challenge you guys back home, okay? If they hate us so much, I think this is a good test of God's faithfulness to pray for our enemies. And I'm also doing this for myself. Let's try to pray for the Houthis and for the Yemenite terrorists to have a change of heart and actually start loving the people of Israel and the Jewish people instead of hating us. I think that's very hard because, I mean, they're launching missiles at me. And I said that today I'm going to start and try to do that. Okay, so if you want to join me in that prayer, okay, I'm not praying for the terrorists, against the terrorists, but for God to change the heart of the people. And I believe that he can do that.
I believe God could change also the heart of the leadership itself.
Yeah.
We've seen it in Bible times, and I think we can see it again. And my prayers, and people might think that this is disingenuous. The only solution for this region is for people to have a change of heart. If they're following a doctrine, and I don't want to make this thing about Islam. There are good things in Islam, but when you look at the outcome of radical Islam and what it's done to this country and other countries in this region, and in general to countries under the sort of the scorn of that, it is terrible. Moving away from that is the way to go, and having people change their heart and find God in the right way, and find virtue and change their leadership to one that cares about its people and acts accordingly, could completely radically change this region for the better. And I think that's what we need to pray for. We need to pray for the leaders to be replaced or to be changed, one of the two.
Yes.
And that's something we've seen in Bible times, and I believe we can see it again. We've seen things change here at a rate that is, we have a different
far more rapid than what we had 530 days ago.
Yeah, rapidly changing on almost on a daily basis. Now, we can see something like that. And my prayer for the people of Gaza is one that they'll have a moment of reckoning. That they'll come to terms with the fact that what the leadership and the faith that they followed is evil. And it is. It's indoctrinated them to kill and destroy internally and externally. And that they have a change of heart and they choose a different path for themselves. And I hope the same thing for the people of Lebanon, and the same thing for the people of Syria, and the same thing, of course, for the people of Iran and Iraq. They deserve better than the evil leadership that they have.
Yes.
They need people to preach to them and call to them for the good of what mankind can offer, not the worst of what mankind can offer. That's where I hope they go. And I think also one more thing to pray for is our leaders. We talk a lot about politics. In Israel, we love arguing about politics. We love and hate all politics, we love and hate all our leaders equally sometimes. But to the point, we need to pray for them to have supernatural wisdom, to do the right thing in the right time. And I feel like we are in an opportune time, in a time where the eyes of the world are looking at what's happening here, where the U.S. is supporting us in a way that it hasn't before, and that if we time it right, and if we get it right, it could be this dramatic change where Saudis pulled into the picture, Egypt, Jordan, the U.S., Israel, Qatar, all of the mix.
Can do something very good.
Something amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my hope.
Definitely. And guys, I want to ask you, back home, what would you do in order to release the remaining of the Israeli hostages? If you can comment in the comments here on YouTube. What would you do if you were the Prime Minister of Israel or the Prime Minister of the United States? Okay? Let us know. Until then, have a great weekend. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Share, like, subscribe, click this little bell, and most importantly, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel.